The people celebrating 250 years. Here's this day in history.
Well, as we count down to America's 250th birthday this summer, we're sharing our We the People series, the people, places, and things of the past that have shaped our country to what it is today. Talking about some animals and some animal lovers, Charlie.
Yeah, something you love. We're talking about chimpanzees. On this day, April 3rd, 1934, primatologist and conservation advocate Jane Goodall was born in the United Kingdom. Goodall's love for chimpanzees began when she was a kid, when her father gave her a stuffed chimpanzee instead of a teddy bear. You would love that, Phoebe. Stuffed chimpanzee instead of a teddy bear. Wow, I didn't even know they made them. In 1960, when she was 26 years old, Goodall traveled from England to Tanzania to research chimpanzees. At the time, the world knew very little about chimps and even less about their genetic similarities to humans. Goodall used an unorthodox approach, living in their habitat to research their society as a neighbor rather than an observer. This led to her discovery that chimps make and use tools, which is considered one of the bigger scientific breakthroughs of the 20th century. Goodall would continue her work as a researcher and activist until her death on October 1st, 2025. Through the years, Goodall has come to Wisconsin several times, with the most recent time when she spoke at UW-Madison in 2023. That's this day in history for April 3rd.
Jane Goodall. I mean, I would be hard-pressed to find somebody on this planet who doesn't know, the legacy of Jane Goodall and what she's done for the animal community.
Dedicated her life to it.
Wonderful woman. Very cool. Charlie, thank you.